First up is a friend of mine, Kate Beever. Kate and I met, I don't even know how we met.
Years ago, yeah.
4 or 5 years ago. She is a mainstay in the Portland music scene, but she also does something very, very fresh, and how she does things is very kind of. I only know of Kate doing this kind of work. I don't know anybody else. There could be other people doing it. She runs Maine Music and Health. It's a music therapy company. I follow her. I see all the great work she's doing. I don't want to give too much away. I think she's going to come up here and kind of let you know what she does. But please give her a warm welcome. And this is Kate Beever.
Thank you all for coming. I was just inspired in my small group. I thought of my latest fresh approach in sort of a small example is that I decided to get rid of the internet at my house. I know. Which has been, it's been a few months and it's been life-changing. And I find that I am way more efficient when I work during the day. And when I go home, I've been like painting, which isn't my thing at all, and going for runs in the morning and sleeping better. So that's the freshest thing I could think of. And then I guess my field is music therapy, which especially in Maine is pretty fresh. And by fresh, I mean didn't exist at all when I moved here. One of my very first music therapy clients was at Sloan Kettering Cancer Hospital in New York. He was an older man, I think older than me. I was in my 20s. And he had kidney cancer, which had spread from many other places. So he was in the end of his life, and that's what I was specializing in there is palliative care, so working with people at the end of life, whether they were 18 months old or 98 years old. And this particular gentleman was referred to me for non-compliance, which means not taking his medication, not letting the nurses in, and depression. And he didn't want to talk to the staff social worker or any family members. And being a Mainer, I'm very used to what we call the grumpy old man type. Grew up with them in my household and really love that sort of attitude of like, I can do this myself, and we were just talking about this, Mainers like don't need help with anything. And so music therapy is this really nice, what we call backdoor approach to dealing with people like that. So I went in, very gently offered music therapy, and like many people, he said, what is music therapy? I don't want you singing to me, go away. But after a few weeks, he finally allowed me to come in and just offer him music, so play a little bit for him. Which really isn't what I do, and that's been a huge misconception about what music therapy is. I don't often just sing for people, which is good because I'm a drummer. So this man, just based on his age and where he had grown up, which was Manhattan, I chose some show tunes, jazz songs, and played a little bit. And when I got to a song from Man of La Mancha called The Impossible Dream, he sort of teared up. He was like, oh, I like show tunes, and I liked that one. And so I said, oh, I have my in. And so we started talking more about the music. And, you know, he opened up a little bit, and then we chose another song called Evergreen by Barbra Streisand. I don't know if anyone knows it. But he said, wow, that's my wedding song. And then really opened up about how he was sad. He and his wife had been in an argument, and she hadn't been to visit him in a few weeks. And he'd been there for 4 months, I think. So we went through some lyric analysis, something I do a lot where we talk about the lyrics, write our own, and we did some singing together. And within 2 more months, he was inviting nurses into his room and just belting show tunes from the end of his bed. And they were like, what did you do to this man? So it's a really nice intervention. And then the other beauty of it is eventually, when he was about to pass away, his whole family came in, and we were able to sing his wedding song back to him as he died. And that was sort of a turning point in my life. In one way, knowing like this is really powerful work on multiple levels, and then also knowing life is short, so you should do what you want with it. So that's a lot of times when I talk about starting a business, that's kind of what I go back to, is why wouldn't you do what you're interested in, even if it's really hard? Because we're all going to reach that point someday where we have to say goodbye. So I decided to move back to Maine. I wanted to come back to Maine, and I had a lot of pushback from people in New York who said, you know, we'd rather keep you here and have you get more experience and supervision. And then from Mainers who were like, we don't know what that is, it's going to fail here, don't even try it. And I am the type of Mainer that when you hear no, it just makes you want to do it even more. So I came back, started a private practice, and my reasoning for opening a business is because it was the only option, because there's no jobs here. And now I'm finally at a point where I am able to hire other people, which is a really good feeling. And I've seen, it's only been 5 years, and I've seen a huge shift in attitude in Maine about music therapy, about people who, when I first came, were saying, I've never heard of that, I don't know what that is, to doctors referring patients to me for good reasons. So a lot of the work I do is working with people with brain injury on speech. So I've seen people who hadn't been talking in years singing, and then you teach them phrases they need to say, like, I love you, or I need to go to the bathroom, very important. And you teach them those phrases through song, and then take the music away, and eventually they're speaking. Really beautiful work like that. And then obviously the emotional and social aspect. So I am as a performer, I'm a drummer, so I'm a little biased, but percussion is a really accessible thing for people that aren't musicians to be able to try and benefit from, and feel really good about participating, because there's no perfection involved. You just hit things, which feels good. So I do a lot of drum circle style groups for people working on social skills, like teenagers with autism, at-risk youth who are close to dropping out of school. I've done a lot of work with women refugees in Portland, working through trauma, and a lot of work with teen mothers. So I do a lot of sort of co-treating with other therapists, PTs, OTs, speech therapists. And then I do a lot of partnering with arts and healthcare organizations. So when Maine Med wants to make their treatment more, incorporate more arts into it, I'll train them on that. And then when the Portland Symphony Orchestra wants to be in a healthcare setting, I'll train the orchestra musicians on how to get comfortable talking to patients and playing with them.
So I'll introduce Kirsten.
Oh.
So Kirsten's a member at Peloton and has been around for quite a while at this point. And Kirsten has brought a lot of fun into our space. There's like Play-Doh and things to play with physically.
There used to be a hopscotch board.
Hopscotch on our concrete floor. And Kirsten is also part of what we have on Friday afternoons called Body Double, which is just we have this place that's assigned for Friday afternoons. And if you've been procrastinating something all week, you show up at that table and you declare what you're going to do, and everybody at that table holds you accountable to do it that afternoon. And I love that. So Kirsten is a PhD psychologist specializing in ADHD in adults, and she's working on a book right now about how fun makes your life better.
Oh, I'll tell you about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your story about today?
So here's my biography really quickly. I was born in Westchester County, or actually in Indiana. I grew up in Westchester County outside of New York. Happy kid, perfectly normal family. Went through high school, many different high schools, and one of the last things that I remember being told by my psychology teacher in high school was, whatever you do, Kirsten, don't go into psychology. So I enrolled in SUNY Stony Brook out in Long Island as a psychology major. And I spent the next 8 years going to school for psychology, not an undergraduate. I did move on to graduate school after 3.5 years because I was determined to get through my program. Got through the program, and then it took me another 3 years past that 8 years to finally finish my dissertation, which for you guys who know about dissertations, ABD, all but dissertation, so it was me dragging around this ball for a while until I finally got that done. And then I worked in community mental health, and then I worked with the geriatric population, and then I went to work in hospitals, and then I went to work in a school system, and then I went back to community mental health, and somewhere along the way I opened a private practice that I kind of worked in, but not really, and I kind of did therapy, and I did testing, and then I decided I hated doing therapy because clients were boring me to the point that I was going to fall asleep. So I opened a nonprofit, which is now running out of Learning Works, called Back on Track, working with juveniles. Very proud of that because I lasted in that for 5 years, which was phenomenal, but I got to be an executive director and a marketing expert and a human resources person and a program developer, and all of these things. And then I had family along the way too. I have 2 boys, one who's almost 15, the other one who's 12. And when my now 12-year-old was 7 years old, we were at the pediatrician's, and he had to have a physical exam, and he had one sock off and one sock on, and the pediatrician said, can you take your other sock off? I need to examine you. And he found the reflex hammer, just playing with it. It was so much fun. And 2 minutes later, the pediatrician said again, do you think you could take your other sock off so I could examine you? Sure. And he kept playing with the reflex hammer. And the pediatrician, who was a friend of mine since college, said to me, do you ever think that maybe your son has a problem with attention? I said, well, it's just the way he is. It's the way I was when I was growing up. It's the way he is. You know, he's just being playful. And the next week we had a parent-teacher conference, and he was in 2nd grade, and his teacher said, you know, his records for the last 2 years, the teachers have commented on the fact that he has more difficulty than the other kids paying attention. They had never told me that. Shocker. So I started thinking about this again. I had been working with people who had learning differences for years at that point. I had actually become known in Maine as the person to go to. If you have ADHD, get her to evaluate your kid or your adult. So that's what I did. My kid, how did I miss it? 2 days later, I was sitting at home. ADHD is highly heritable. My ex-husband does not have ADHD by any stretch of the imagination, and so I was sitting there in my living room going, oh my God. I called my ex-husband and I said this to him, and he said, well, I could have told you it was you. I knew from the first date that there was something about you. I just didn't know what it was called. So I went to my friend, the nurse practitioner, and said, okay, here's my life story. And she said, oh yeah, you've got it too. Great, goody gumdrops. So I started my work in the field of ADHD formally at that time, not by default anymore. I had my doctoral degree. I chose to get trained also as an ADHD coach because therapy just doesn't work. When you have ADHD, I don't care what happened to you as a kid. It's not going to make you manage your ADHD any better now. I was at PelotonLabs working on my business, and we had a marketing person next door to us, and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to work with people to help them have more fun when they have ADHD, because when we're having more fun, our symptoms are managed. And he said, oh, PlayDHD. Of course, Jeff Ryan said that to me, and so I had a company. My focus has been on helping people to be more playful in their lives if they have ADHD, because the challenges of ADHD are problems with motivation, interest, and attention. And if you think about the last time you played, I'm going to bet you that you were very interested, you were paying full attention, and you were really motivated because you wanted to keep on going. So my clients learn to be more playful, and they learn to manage their attention in a natural way. And that's how I do things differently. That's how I'm known in my community of peers. Yay.
Scott holds a special position with PelotonSpeaks because he's the producer.
Yes.
His Oport Media is our sponsor, and so he's been part of the team that's been organizing these and figuring out how to get them recorded and edited and posted to CTN and on the internet and all that stuff. And so it's been really fun working with him, and we're happy to have you here tonight.
That's right. If it's not on video, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. That's right.
Well, I'm Scott Taylor. I guess my background is I spent about 15 years in Hollywood doing a million different jobs. Some of the fun ones were I was a producer on Big Brother, the reality show, which is not as real as you think it is. And I actually wrote a sitcom with Victoria Jackson that never got made, but it was a lot of fun working on that. And I was a writer's assistant on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, so I saw when Brad and Angelina met and all that kind of stuff, and it was a fun experience. So my wife's from Brunswick. We came back here about 8 years ago to raise the kids and just kind of get away from the crazy lifestyle of Hollywood. And it was the right decision, but it took a lot of time to kind of reset. We really kind of were burned out. LA's super competitive. It was nice to come back to Maine where there's, not very many people and nice people, and also just kind of closer to nature, the clean air and the local vegetables, organic, and all that kind of good stuff. But it took me years. I mean, I started out selling cars and doing marketing and doing traveling sales, and that was kind of brutal when you got young kids. And I finally kind of came to a point where I was like, well, I really should be doing the thing I love, but not even being that selfish. I just should be doing the thing that I'm good at, right? Because if you're doing the thing you're good at that you like, I mean, it's a two-sided coin, I guess, because there's things you're good at that you don't like doing. But the thing that I had spent 15 years training and enjoyed doing, at least doing something like that, because I would be more successful at it and enjoy it, and hopefully it would be better. And right about the same time I produced for free basically this short film that we shot up in Moosehead Lake, and it was this short little thing. We never actually finished it, but it was a fun project, and that kind of had just kind of got me out of the nest right to the point where I met this guy named Kyle Rankin. Now, if you don't know, Kyle is a graduate of York High School, went to U Maine, and he was in Portland for years making. He made short films, then he made a feature film, then he was making a lot of these internet kind of videos, and then he won a contest called Project Greenlight with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. You guys might have heard of him. So Kyle goes out to LA and is chasing the dream out there, and he made a bunch of cool films. And he was working in the studio system, and he decided, I really want to go kind of try to do an independent film. I could do it my way, have creative control, like an artist does. And so he raised a bunch of money on crowdfunding. He raised $110,000, which is amazing. And he came back to shoot it in Portland, and that's where I come into the story. So I met Kyle and was just kind of like, hey man, what do you need? I just had done this short film, I got this background, and just started hustling and kind of ended up becoming indispensable. So I ended up being the line producer and the locations manager and the publicist and just kind of the guy who ended up just like, hey, let's trade this. We need this, we get this crazy ask, but here's what we can give back. And it was this great experience where we even had the tourism board on and Allagash and Coffee by Design and all these fun people were just like, hey, how can we help? What can we do? And it became this kind of community thing. And we had young MECA students and other people that we were training in the arts and in filmmaking. And boom. And then so we finished that in 2014. We just finished the film actually about a year ago. I mean, we finished shooting a year ago, and we finished the film in May and actually had a premiere at Memorial Day weekend. So that was great. But then it's like, now what? It's called Night of the Living Dead. And it'll be streaming on Netflix probably in the spring, or maybe for next Halloween. But it was this great, awesome experience. I was great at it. Everybody enjoyed it. Helped a lot of people. And it's like, now what? So that's, and Kyle's in California, so he went back to go do his stuff. So basically, I was left with, like, what are we going to do? So I had been doing some little stuff with my partners who are filming this. So that's a little weird, but that's all right. So we started doing actually the film led to some commercial work with some of the people we'd actually worked with on the film. So kind of getting the commercial side of that going, which is some good bread and butter stuff. We really enjoyed that. But I'm like, well, we really need what Maine needs, and kind of like what Kate was saying is there's a vacuum, right? So we're like, well, there's a lot of people doing little films and little short films, and they're great, but it's not, there's not a consistently professional film community. And that's kind of my vision, is to create a professional film community that can be making interesting short films and interesting, feature films, but that can be selling them and making money and training people and providing jobs for folks. And it's not, and you have to do that in a very smart way. You have to do it so that the investors make their money back. You have to do it so that the people that are giving something get something back. It's what's great about Maine is maybe it's because it's rural, maybe because it's cold all the time, or maybe because it's just whatever, but a lot of people, we operate on kind of an exchange mentality, okay? You don't have to pay retail cash for everything. You get out of New York, you got to pay full price. But in Maine, you can trade, right? So, we got to think of exchange not in terms of cash value, but so if I cook dinner for 4 hours and invite you over and you say thank you, it's an even exchange, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to create opportunities for these young people who are interested in creative filmmaking and creative problem solving, and artists and photographers and these kinds of things who are graduating from Maine and then they're out the door to New York or LA or whatever. So we want to keep them here. We want to kind of create almost kind of a manufacturing process, right? So we get local money that invests in a local product. We export the product. We bring in some experts, actors that will help us make a better product, and then we sell it, and then we bring it back and do it again. So that's kind of what I'm doing, and we're very close to our first, our second production, but our first Maine originated program, which we're hopefully shooting in December. And stay tuned on that, I guess.
All right, well, this is awesome for me. Because Dave is a personal friend of mine. He runs Taylor Higgins over by Fitness Factory on Warren Avenue. Met him through my girlfriend, actually. And I invited him tonight, and also Amber from Hayes Chiropractic, and I was joking with him the whole time that he was going to speak tonight because I thought that we'd have more people kind of recommend, but I've gained so much respect for you that now this is your first time and you're going to speak, and this is great. So I might learn something right now.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No pressure. This is that's all I'm going to say about Dave. Dave can tell you about what he's going to talk about, but this is Dave. So give him a nice round of applause.
Thank you very much. So, Dave Higgins from Taylor Higgins Physical Therapy and Wellness. Wow, where to start? So, my business partner and I met working in corporate healthcare. This is a great segue from music therapy. And both of us kind of met behind the scenes there and decided that corporate healthcare was not for us because we didn't like to be micromanaged or told from someone in an ivory tower that you spent too much time treating your patient when it's us who's supposed to be deciding what's best for our patients. So she came up with the idea of starting our own outpatient clinic. Why not? So we decided to do that back in 2011. It took us about a year to get credentialed with the insurance companies and Medicare. 300-page application for Medicare. That was a nightmare. So in 2012, March of 2012, we saw our first client. In June of 2012, we ended up taking over a failing gym inadvertently because we had opened up the clinic inside of a gym that was going downhill. So without business degrees, we decided it was a good idea that we keep our clinic and try to take over the gym and run that as well. So we took over the gym. It had 800 members. Previously, it had at its max 2,600 members. So we ended up taking over at 800. It was in the red severely. We had no clue what we were doing, and somehow, through the help of many different small business owners, gym members that just wanted to see us succeed, we brought it back to around 1,400 members, made it solvent again, and then we ended up selling it, a majority of it, last year, and moving the entire gym to a new location down the road on Warren Avenue in Portland, and that gym is the Fitness Factory. So our clinic is now in a much better location. As of November last year, our new location's phenomenal. It's significantly better than the old location, so we are in a position to succeed at the new location. But we didn't, going into this, didn't expect anything about taking over a gym. We just wanted to be PTs and do what was best for our clients. One of the things that we did want was to be different than any other clinic. So instead of seeing 2, 3, 4, 5 patients at a time, we wanted to see one patient at a time, so that we could focus on their care for the full hour and then actually bill for that full hour, because that's what you should do. So that was our philosophy, was we were going to be different that way. We opened it up inside of a gym because, of course, we wanted to use their equipment. So everything kind of ended up aligning, and Now we're in a really good location. We still get to use the equipment. We're just minority owners at this point, but still get full access right into the gym to use the equipment. And I just had a great conversation about 3 hours ago with a caseworker for a workers' comp company. And she said, wow, you know, I'm so glad to hear that you exist. I had no idea that you existed. And one of the most difficult things for us was still, and we're still trying to do this, is get our name out there because of the way that Mainers are. We're typically set in our ways. And what we found is that it's really hard to kind of break into the referral zone where doctors know you're there and they start sending you clients. And especially because we ended up taking over the gym, we couldn't focus on the clinic until basically last year. We kind of started all over again last year, but it's a much better location, and we're really excited. We're prepped, we're ready to go.